Hey everybody, it's Liz from West Star Tarot, and today I'm here to do a VR to Tom Benjamin, who recently posted a video called, I think, something like My Workhorse Decks. And I enjoyed seeing Ben's choices, and it inspired me to start thinking about some of my decks that I use most often and that really are sort of the core of my tarot practice, both for myself and when I read for others. And how Ben did it was he went through his tarot journey. And he started with workhorse decks at the beginning, kind of the middle, and then current. And so I thought I would do the same thing. And I also want to include, sort of as a side note, workhorse decks when I read for others. So that's my plan. And any of you who watch my videos on the regular are not going to be surprised by a lot of these choices or decks that I'm showing. But let me go ahead. So, starting at the beginning, the first deck that I ever got, first tarot deck that I ever got, was this one, the Mother Piece. And you can see by its well-worn edges that I did, in fact, use this deck a lot. I was not attracted to the sort of standard decks at the time. They were just, I was finding them too white, too patriarchal, too, I don't know, colonizer, I don't know what to say. But anyway, they didn't work for me. And then one day I was in a shop in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I came across this deck. And I was like, wait, what? What is this? A round tarot, and it's feminist. So I bought it. And as you can see by a lot of these cards, it is Rider-Waite-Smith inspired. But I didn't know that at the time because it was in the mid-1980s and I really did not know much about tarot history, or any of that. So I picked this deck up, and for many years it was my only tarot deck. Fast forward a few more. So when it's your only tarot deck, it's going to be a workhorse because it's the only deck you have to use. And then fast forward a few years, and at the same shop, I came across this deck. And I think this one is in order, maybe. Is it? Kind of. So this is the Daughters of the Moon. This is the original black and white version. And again, round. Feminist. What's not to love? I have both the lovers versions in here. I really now use the colored in version more than the black and white, but this is really important to me because it was one of my first tarots and I used it a lot. Fiona Morgan was it's different artists contributing, and oh, here's the Fool, called The Dreamer. Fiona Morgan, in collaboration with other artists, created the deck and printed it in black and white with like flat paper on the front so that you could color it in yourself. And as I've mentioned when I've talked about this deck, I attempted to, many times I thought I would go ahead and color it in, but I was too afraid I'd wreck the deck. And now that there is a full color version, I'm really glad that I left it as is. So that was my second deck. And then my third tarot deck was this one, Michael Tierra's, and oh, I forget the artist's name, Candace, I can't remember. Oh, it should say in the booklet, Candace Canton. This is a US Games deck, and I was at an herbal conference in the early 90s, I believe it was, and Michael Tierra, who's a traditional Chinese medicine herbalist, was selling these decks at his table. And again, just like I was so struck by seeing a feminist tarot with the Mother Peace and the Daughters of the Moon, I felt the same way about this one. Wait a minute, herbal tarot? Herbs and tarot in one place? Well, how cool is that? So this was my third tarot deck. And those decks, along with maybe a couple others, were the only decks that I owned for decades, from the mid-1980s until the mid-2000s, I would say. Those were the only decks that I had. And so they were workhorse decks because they were the only decks I had. So then around, I would say 2014, 2013, 2014, I decided, you know what, I'm going to stop dabbling and I'm going to really learn tarot so that I can do readings for myself and others and not have to consult a guidebook. I'm going to learn this system. And so I decided probably the best way to go, which was contrary to how I felt originally about tarot, was to use the Rider-Waite-Smith deck as my deck to learn tarot. And this was the deck that I picked out, the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot, because I liked the coloration. Backs, I liked. You can see this is straightforward Rider-Waite-Smith. And what I did was every day for a year, and I kept a journal of the year, and at the end of the year, I went back and looked. So anyway, my plan was every day for a year to pull a card, look at it intuitively, decide what, like look at this card and say, okay, what does this card say to me? What does it mean in terms of my own interpretation? And then I would look it up. And I used Joan Bunning's book primarily, other books too, but primarily Joan's. I think then I also used Rachel Pollack's and Mary Greer, but those were kind of the main folks back then. About midway into the year, I decided, I think I'll graduate. I'm going to start pulling more than one card. So I started doing 3 card readings every day for the rest of the year. And as I said, when I looked back on the journals that I kept for this year, I only missed 6 days. So I really did, shockingly, stick to it and meet my goal. And I realized how much these Rider-Waite-Smith images really are understandable just by looking at the cards. It's you can see what this card is saying. I also worked with numerology and elemental suit meanings and so forth. But anyway, this is how I learned the tarot, with the Radiant Rider-Waite. And again, it's kind of beat up. Here's the box, no cover. And I still use this deck to this day, along with another workhorse, Morgan Greer. These 2 decks are the decks I use for my deck and studies. So even though I don't really read as much with the Radiant Rider-Waite. I do use it on a regular basis for my decking studies. So that is sort of my middle of the pathway decks. Well, actually, soon thereafter, I found 2 other decks. So these are also middle of the road, not middle of the road, but middle of my journey decks. The first one is the Gaian Tarot by Joanna Powell Colbert. And I really love this deck. It does follow, to a certain extent, Rider-Waite-Smith. Joanna uses, this is one of my all-time favorite wheels. I'm not a fan of that card, generally speaking, but I think this one is gorgeous. It is Rider-Waite-Smith inspired, but it has its own voice as well. And there is, you know, some diversity in this deck, which I find is nice. And Joanna names the suits air, fire, water, earth. So it has very clear elemental associations. And then the quartz are child, explorer, guardian, and elder. So I like that we've taken the royalty out of the quartz and replaced it more with stages of life. So it's one of my favorite fools. Love it. So that is a deck that I used the heck out of and still do to this day. I love this deck. It will always be, I think and hope, one of my workhorse decks. And then from that same time period, I also came across this deck. And again, you can see how beat up these boxes are, sort of a testament to how much I used. In fact, this guidebook is like falling apart. And the, you know, it's just, it's fluff. This deck, I call it a fluffy deck because it's been so well used and so shuffled that it's just not stiff at all anymore. It's quite, ooh, hello devil. I love this. This is by, this is Tarot de Saint Croix by Lisa de Saint Croix. I just love this deck. It just is a deck of my heart, like the Gaian, and I used this deck almost every day for a year. Again, I seem to have that pattern. I love that Ace of Cups. One of my favorite Ace of Cups. It's just fabulous. And I loved this when I saw this card having a female presenting person as the Hermit. Look at the colors in that. Oh, God, it's just gorgeous. And this, oh, I think this Nine of Swords is just such a great interpretation. So let's just look at this card. You can, whoops. You can see the person lying in bed, awake, with a frightened look on their face. I'm sorry, this is reflection. And so here's the, here's the Nine Swords showing up on the wall. But it's just the moon or the light shining through the blinds. It's not real, it's an illusion. And I really like that because, you know, when I do have Nine of Swords moments at 3 in the morning, I try to remind myself of this card and think about the illusionary nature of some of the things that are keeping me awake, and realizing that really I just have to wait until the sun comes up and I can get out of bed to do something, if there is even anything I can do about whatever it is that's freaking me out. And so that card has actually helped me quite a bit. Lisa's version of that card has helped me quite a bit through some trying Nine of Swords moments. And I I talk to people about that when that card comes up when I read for others. So now, so this deck, this version of this deck I use just for myself, but I also have the borderless version that I use when I read for others. So both of these decks, both versions are Workhorse decks. One that I use still to this day for myself, and one that I use for others. I kind of do like to keep certain decks just for my own personal use. Maybe that's idiosyncratic, I don't know, but I do. And this is one of them. All right, so now coming up to current day, you probably are not going to be surprised that my current Workhorse deck is Fifth Spirit Tarot by Charlie Claire Burgess. I adore this deck. Charlie's guidebook is great, and I also have their book, their tarot book, which I also use when I use really almost any deck. I love the portrayal of people in this deck. I love what Charlie, how they've reframed how we can look at these archetypal images. Oops. And this deck just speaks to me. It works for me. It took me out of my set way, God, I love that moon, of looking at decks, I'm sorry, at images of cards, and it taught me to expand how I see the images and how I interpret the images. And as I said, I do love Charlie's guidebook as well. So this is a deck I've had since it came out in 2022. So I've had this 3 years now, and I really never stop using it for long because it's a deck of my heart for sure. Anyway, a current Workhorse, and my other current Workhorse, or one of my other current Workhorses, and again, no surprise, also by Charlie Claire Burgess, is the Gay Marseille. And I have wanted to familiarize myself with the Marseille system, but I really didn't like the primary colors. I didn't like the googly eyes. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I just cannot. And then Charlie came out with their version of this system. And I'm like, yeah, I'm right there. I love the colors. So what Charlie did is, so this is the 6 of discs. And you can see how there are nods to the Rider-Waite-Smith meanings of the cards. So I kind of like that, as Rider-Waite-Smith is my primary tarot system, the one I'm most comfortable and familiar with. And so you can see little nods to that in the, oh, here we go. R9. So this deck is wonderful. The guidebook is great. And when I do, I mean, I primarily only use this deck as my Marseille deck. But whenever I use any Marseille deck now, I use Charlie's guidebook, Gay Marseille guidebook, because I love how they define these cards. And so I am applying, I'm trying to see, here we go. Like we had the, want to get to the swords, not just the baton. But this is a deck that I just love and cherish and use all the time. Another workhorse. Thank you, Charlie Claire Burgess. And then the last two decks I wanted to mention are decks that are workhorse decks, in particular when I read for others. So the first one is The Unfolding Path by Athena Noctua. And I do like using Rider-Waite-Smith based decks when I'm reading for others, again, because I'm most familiar with this system and I'm comfortable with this system. I mean, I do use other decks as well, but these are just workhorse decks. When I go to like a local bookstore, has me come in several times a year to do readings for their patrons, and you know, I'll be there for 3 hours and I'll read for like 20-30 people, I don't know, whatever. And so I'm reading for a lot of people, and I just kind of want a deck that, and also I will bring several decks and I let people pick which one they want, and people will often choose this deck because they like the artwork. And again, it is more inclusive than your pixie illustrations. So it's an updated version of the Rider-Waite-Smith. And I really love this deck. The only thing I really don't like about this deck is Stinkin' Hay House's cardstock that they use for tarot. It's like, ugh, my pet peeve. But anyway, so that is The Unfolding Path. And then the other workhorse deck I have that I use for others is this one. It's a Carol Herzer Starlight Illuminated. And this was my first and only Carol deck. And oh man, oh yeah, I forgot how shiny this is. This one I used for myself all the time. Again, Rider-Waite-Smith. Sorry, I hope you can see these cards. And then a friend of mine gifted a glitter version. So the glitter version became my personal deck, and this version became the deck that I read for others with. And again, when I'm reading at an event where there's a lot, I will be reading for a lot of people. People react so favorably to this deck, the artwork. They are just so like, wow, what is that? So this is also one of my workhorse decks. You know, there's other decks that I love and adore and use quite a bit, but these are my mainstays. You know, the ones that, and the ones that I spoke about, I really don't use the mother piece much anymore, but I do still use the Daughters of the Moon quite a bit, and also the Herbal Tarot. And as I said, Tarot de Saint Croix and Gaian I use. So these are decks that have come with me on my journey and have stayed with me on my journey. So anyway, those are my workhorse decks. What are some of yours? Thank you, Ben, for inspiring me to do this. And I'll just mention at the end that Ben, aka Tom Benjamin, has a book coming out in October called Fortune Teller's Guide to Tarot Reading. And I urge you to check that out. I've seen little bits and pieces of it, and I think it looks like it's going to be a fabulous book and unique, a book that, you know, I don't see that there's other books like it. So anyway, here we are, the end of the summer, on a beautiful summer day, and I'm surrounded by my favorite lovely decks and my garden. So what could be better than that? Peace and love, my friends.